You know, I can say a lot of things about this next gentleman. I've known him a long time and served with his brother in the Arkansas State Senate. And without giving a long introduction, I think it's easier just to say a few words. Matter of fact, I jotted down a few words. The personification of integrity, honesty, caring, heartfelt, sincerity. An individual that is Arkansan through and through, who shares our values really and deeply without looking at a poll. He knows who we are. He understands that God gave him 2 ears and 1 mouth to listen to us twice as much as he talks. It's our senator from Arkansas, Senator John Boozman.
It really is a pleasure to be with you tonight, and this is a tremendous campus and a tremendous facility. First of all, I just want to thank Jim Hughes and all he represents. All of you that are veterans, I can't imagine anybody that doesn't represent that group better than you do, and we really do appreciate you. We appreciate your service. But also we appreciate all of you that have served our country. And again, thank you very much for all you represent. You know, the candidates are so good. You know, they're so poised. They do such a great job. I was thinking to myself, I'm glad that you all didn't decide to run for the Senate, I suppose. Several years ago, when I was first elected to Congress, a friend of mine called me and said, John, will you come over and talk to the chamber banquet? And I said, I'd be glad to do that. I said, what do you want me to talk about? And he said, well, it's the chamber banquet. You know, you don't want to be too political. Tell them what's going on in Washington and stuff. Tell them about your family's adjustment. And I said, that's fine. I'll be glad to do that. I said, how long would you like for me to talk? And I could hear him thinking on the phone, and after a few minutes he said, John, you're the congressman now. You get to speak as long as you like. But after about 15 minutes, the rest of us are going to get up and go home. So I've always remembered that, so that's a good thing. When I was deciding as to whether or not to run for Congress or not, I went to visit John Paul Hammersmith. And John Paul's become a tremendous mentor and a tremendous friend. No one represented his district or the state better than he did. And I asked him about the job, you know, what it entailed and stuff, and he said, well, the nice thing about the job was you could use the power of the office for good. And we worked really hard to do that. As I was getting ready to leave, he said, John, always remember that the backbone of the Republican Party are the Republican women. And I have remembered that, and we do appreciate you. I see the ones who are at the door, you know, working so hard, doing all of these other things. I was with my wife when I mentioned that on an occasion. We were driving home, and she said, John, they're not only the backbone, they're also the brains. I've got a wife and 3 dogs. I hear those things a lot. Now, a week or so ago, I was standing, getting ready. In fact, I went down on the floor of the Senate to talk about the frustration that I had and the frustration you've got about the high price of energy. The gas prices are killing Arkansas, they're killing rural America, and they'll kill our economy. This goes back to the Carter days. We had our first crisis then, and we developed a Department of Energy. The Department of Energy has done absolutely nothing except spend a lot of money. Our present Energy Secretary doesn't own a car. He doesn't understand how it is in rural America. If you remember, a few years ago, he said that it would be great if our energy prices, if our gasoline prices got up as high as the Europeans, because that would force Americans, because they didn't have the money, to use as much energy, and as a result, we'd have a cleaner world and all of those kind of things. That's great. Like I said, the guy doesn't understand reality. We live in a 70% consumption economy. If we don't have some extra money to buy things, the economy shuts down. When you talk to the big box folks, when you talk to the Walmarts and the Targets and people like that, when I talk to you, you know, the Main Street folks, At about $3.50, it starts to change behavior. At $4 a gallon, it shuts the economy down. When you take, we're all two-wage earner families. If you take $20, $25 out of each one of our pockets each week, there isn't no more disposable income. There's nothing to buy. So it's a huge issue. It's something we've got to wrap our arms around. The president's running around telling everybody about how drilling has increased under his watch and all those kind of things. The reality is that drilling has increased on private lands, despite the EPA and people like that. And you guys are the guys that are doing this. I look at it, Gary, and the rest of you, despite them hassling, drilling is up. That goes back, though, to the Clinton years, the Bush years that made those things possible. The reality is that on federal lands, on private, it's up 17%. On federal lands, which the president actually does control, is down 14%. We've got to get on the stick. We did a teletown hall. I called thousands of people all over the state. And it's really a neat tool. Some of you have probably been on those calls, either mine or others. And you get on, and we don't screen. It's just kind of whatever comes up. I expected us to talk a lot about gasoline. That's all that the callers wanted to talk about. We did a little poll and said, look, it's a very simple question. Is gasoline prices at the point that it's starting to, that it's changing your behavior? 78% said that it was. And again, it really is remarkable. So we need an energy policy. We've got to use the energy that the Lord has blessed us with, and He has blessed us with tremendous resources. If we use what we have, then not only would we have the ability to become less dependent on foreign countries, but also we would be able to keep hundreds of billions of dollars here in this country that we're currently sending overseas. That's really T. Boone Pickett's message. One of the reasons that he got involved in the energy thing is he wonders if we can be a great country and continue to send so much money overseas. It's the greatest transfer of wealth in the history of the country. So again, we need an energy policy. We need a president that's more concerned about creating jobs than protecting his own job. As I was waiting to do my thing on the floor, I went down, I sat down at my desk. And in the Senate, it's a little different than the House. In the House, Republicans sit on one side, Democrats sit on the other. But you're not assigned seat, and you can really sit wherever you want. In the Senate, you physically have a desk. And so I was down there sitting, waiting my turn, and Senator McConnell was talking. And Senator McConnell is the minority leader in the Senate. I think he's got an excellent chance of becoming the majority leader next year. So he's one of the most powerful people in Washington. But he wasn't talking about what was going on so much in Washington. In fact, what he talked about was what had happened in his district since the aftermath of the tornadoes that had hit there. And he talked about individuals. He named names. He talked about people that had stepped forward. He named churches that had stepped forward. He talked about Walmart, the tremendous job that they'd done. Individual managers that had stepped forward. And as all that was going on, I thought to myself, this truly is what America's all about. This is what Jim's about. This is what you guys have served. Ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And that truly is what our country's all about. And our challenge now is that we've got to step forward. The time of taming the frontiers, fighting all of the things that we fought, building America, our veterans, our military protecting us. That truly is what America is all about. If we'll get back to the basics, if we'll get back to having a limited government, if we'll get back to a fair and simple tax base, if we'll do the things that it takes to get us back on track, then we'll be stronger than ever. One of the things, we've had our candidates come up and speak and things, and again, they did a tremendous job. Some of you, are running for office. I've had the opportunity. I don't think it was an opportunity. I've had it wasn't a misfortune either, but I've run in several primaries, and they're tough. And you get out, and you fight for your candidates, and you do all you can do to help them and push them forward. This time of the year especially, it reminds me of spring training at the University of Arkansas. And we had, when I was there, we had 20 days in pads. Well, we had 20 days of practice, probably 18 of those were in pads, which is a lot of time. The coaches didn't worry about it too much because you had a long time to get well. So you were literally out there every day fighting for your position. Now, back in the olden days, I was there 3 stadiums ago. Back in the olden days. Now, the thing that you see the NFL players fighting for today, when you're watching the games, we were taught that's what you were supposed to do. I was taught that my head was my weapon. And so all of those licks, like I say, that you see people getting fined for, we literally used to lay awake at night, trying to figure out how to do that during the spring on our fellow players. And I had to do that because that was the only athletic ability that I had at all. But at the end of spring training, after a very tough 20 days, they put the depth chart up there, and you accepted that depth chart. You might be a little disappointed or this or that, but you fell right in line. You became part of the team again, and then you started dreaming about clobbering somebody else on the opposing team. So we're going to have hard fought out primaries, and that's just part of it. But at the end of the day, we've got to get back together. If we'll do that, then we'll be strong and we'll be victorious coming the fall. Some of my greatest supporters that fought me so hard in the primary and going to the House and the Senate and really made the difference, in many cases for me going ahead and getting elected. So it is something that we've got to work on really hard to get back. Now, the stakes are high. We've got to get back to a limited government, and our candidates outline things very, very well. We've got to quit spending more than we have. These are basic economic truths that we all know. America is a great nation, but it's not immune to, the basic laws of economics. If we continue spending at the result that we are now, we'll wind up like Greece, and Greece is a real problem. Greece can be handled probably, but you get into nations like France, Spain, and Italy that are on the bubble. It's like they say, they are too big to fail, but they're also too big to save. And so there's real concern that Europe will be like a domino effect, and if that does, that will greatly affect us. If we'll get our economic house in order, we'll be stronger than ever, in the sense that the whole world looks to us for leadership. And, again, we'll be a safe haven, we'll have a greater investment, and be, as I said, stronger than ever. Speaking of the world looking to us for leadership, when I was in the House, I was on the Foreign Affairs Committee, and spent a lot of time traveling to different places, listening to different people that were from overseas. One of the guys that I got to know well was a guy named Ward Brennan. Ward's an interesting guy. He served under President Bush, and then he served under President Obama, a role in the State Department, helping the continent of Africa. But Ward is he's not a type A personality, he's a type AAA personality. Okay? The guy is well on top. When he was young, he had a business, very, very successful. He was sitting in church one day, and he didn't, he's the kind of guy that was in church and thought that he should be in there and his family should be in there, but wasn't really crazy about being there. And but he showed up, had his family there. After church one Sunday, his pastor grabbed him, and he said, Ward, I'm going to Africa, and I'd like for you to go with me. And, Ward looked at him and said, no, I don't want to go. So the pastor said, well, will you pray about it? And Ward said, no, I'm not going to pray about it. That's what we pay you to do. So he goes home and he feels bad about that, okay? And so later on he relented. He called the pastor and then decided to go to Africa with him. And he went and he changed his life. He saw a lot of people in need, but he also saw a lot of people that had great faith that, really just barely had the shirt on the back, but they give it to him. And that really touched him. So he got involved. And as a result, like I say, he actually was picked by President Bush and then President Obama to work in that area. A few years ago, he was in Africa, and he was going through a village, and went through the village and stopped, and they were visiting. And he visited with a young woman that was literally dying. Her husband had died about 6 months earlier. She was suffering from AIDS, getting ready to die. Visited with her, came back about 2 weeks, and she passed away. Now, she had 3 or 4 children, and in Africa, if you're in that situation, there is no safety net. And so it's very difficult for those kids to survive. So he made arrangements and got them squared away, and then went on and, left the village and went to another. As he was driving away, in the course of his, it was a drive, his driver, had been driving around for a couple of weeks, looked at him, and he said, "Mr. Brim, you're from America, what do you pray for?" Meaning that we're so blessed in this country, we've got so much. How could you actually pray for anything? So again, we are blessed with the greatest, freest country that the world has ever known, and the whole world looks to us for leadership. The whole world depends on us. And I'm not advocating us bailing out Europe. I'm not advocating any of that, okay? But I can tell you, when the Americans walk in the room, they look for us for leadership. And we've got to stay the course. We truly are the city on the hill, like I said, that the whole world is looking at. So there's lots at stake. So all of us in this room, we've got to do as much as we can do. You can do that in a number of different ways. Some of you can support your candidates financially. Some of you can support them by doing a lot of footwork, calling, things like that. But I can't tell you how important that is. I was with, right after I was elected to Congress, I was with Dick Armey, the majority leader back then. And I was with him and 2 or 3 others. He'd been very kind to me during my election stuff, and I got to know him. The only thing wrong with him, he was from Texas, and that didn't go very well. But anyway, we got to be friends, and he was standing around talking to us one day, and he said, as somebody that represents the public, the most important thing that you can do is be honest and sincere. That is the name of the game. And then he laughed and said, if you ever get where you can fake it, you got it made. But he went on to say, he paused and got very serious. He went on to say, you can't fake it. It just doesn't work. There's no substitute for you all, again, talking to a neighbor, talking to a friend, telling them about your candidate, telling them how important this election is, telling them it's about our children, it's about our grandchildren, it's about us at this point. Beth Ann mentioned a $15.5 trillion deficit, and I was thinking back, when I was running for the Senate, I was running around here, you were hearing me talk about a $14 trillion deficit, okay? And then, I've been talking about a $15 trillion deficit. We're at 15.5. By the end of the year, we'll be talking about a $16 trillion deficit. The Congressional Budget Office, which is the arm of Congress, a bipartisan arm, is very fair. The Office of Management and Budget, which is out of the White House, another arm of budgeting. Senators, congressmen, candidates, Republicans and Democrats, you name it, we all agree that the debt is unsustainable, and yet we're not doing anything about it of substance. We've got to quit spending more than we have. And again, that's why this election is so important. We need to be electing conservatives at every level. We need them at the congressional level. We need them all the way through the ranks. Again, that's the name of the game, is electing conservatives. The stakes are very high. Now, I'll be glad to answer 2 or 3 very easy questions. Got anything else on your mind? Yes?
When are you going to prepare a budget in the Senate?
Well, the question was, and he's got a great voice, I need your voice. When are we going to have a budget in the Senate? You know, it's been almost 3 years, and we're not going to have one this year. Senator Reid has already announced that. And you say, that's John, that's crazy. I mean, we're talking about a $3.7 trillion enterprise, and we don't have a budget. You, as a household, have a budget. You have a budget as a business. I'm an optometrist, and I'm a doctor by training. My brother and I had about 85 employees. I understand that. It just doesn't work. And yet, here we are as a nation without a budget. And so the reason that we won't have a budget in the Senate is that Senator Reid doesn't want to bring it on the floor and talk about the red ink. He doesn't want to talk about what we need to do to actually move towards balancing the budget. Instead, he would rather have a document come out of the White House that is all things to everyone, you know, and winds up putting us another $6 or $8 trillion in debt over the next 10 years. So we're not going to have one this year. Next year, I think that we will gain control of the Senate and we'll have a budget, I can promise you. That wasn't very bad question. It was good. You got any other things at all? Yes.
What do you feel is the single most important problem facing the United States today?
I think there's 3 things going on right now that at any other time would just consume everything we were doing. The first is the debt and the deficit, the economy. Okay, we talked a lot about that. The other thing that's going on, we brushed on it, Europe, that's a big deal. The country of France, we do about $2 billion a day, you know, back and forth. There are thirdly, the reason I mention France is they've got a lot of investment in Arkansas, okay? But if Europe goes down, it really will be a big deal for the United States. So that's lurking out there. And I can tell you, you know, the other thing that's an example of, that's where we're heading if we're not careful. You know, again, they thought just like we are thinking right now that they're special and the laws of economics didn't apply to them, and they are in big, big trouble. The reason that we need to get things under control right now is so much easier than waiting until they're the position they're in, where you've got to do these grave austerity measures. So Europe is a big deal. The other thing that's lurking out there that's a huge deal is Iran and Israel. That again is a big deal. The reason being is if Iran is allowed to go nuclear, they've said, if you listen to them at all, they've said, we can't wait to build a bomb so we can blow Israel off the face of the earth and then deal with the United States and Europe. For Iran to have a bomb and all of for the biggest exporter of terror in the world, for all of those organizations to come under a nuclear umbrella, you know, once they actually have the bomb, is a very, very serious problem. I've had the opportunity of being on the Foreign Affairs Committee, to be in Saudi Arabia, to be in visit with the Turks, visit with the Egyptians. If Iran goes nuclear, Saudi Arabia will go nuclear, Turkey will go nuclear, Egypt will go nuclear. They're scared to death of the Persians. There's a religious conflict, the Shiites and the Sunnis, but also historically, the Persians have just trampled them throughout the ages. And most of this is really not so much Iran, Israel, it's more Iran becoming the great Muslim empire. So, you know, that's another thing that we have to watch. You know, Israel is probably going to strike Iran. They don't have any other option. You know, if I was in the Senate there, or whatever they call it, Knesset, you know, if we were there, and based on their history, you know, there are people that would like to wipe them off the face of the earth. They've experienced that, so they can't afford, you know, to let them do that. The problem's going to be when Israel strikes them, they'll probably have to overfly Saudi Arabia, and the Saudi Arabians will let them do that. They won't admit to it. They'll let them do that because, again, they are scared to death of the Iranians. So the question is going to be then, what will Iran do to retaliate? Will they sink a ship in the Straits? Will they bomb the oil fields of you know, some of the other countries over there to reap destruction on the west? So we'll just have to wait and see, but that would have a profound impact on the price of oil. So big things. In regard to Iran and Israel, the important thing is, my position, and I'll do everything I can. We have to support the nation of Israel once they do that. We have to provide them the arms, the armaments that they're going to need to protect themselves. And, that's also very important. Well, thank you all very much for letting me be here. It's been a real honor. I'll be around if you want to personally grab me by the throat about something and say, John, shut up. Like I said, I'll be around. And we just appreciate you and appreciate, again, the leadership of the